Welcome to Reporter's Notebook, where we talk to the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the stories breaking on their beats. I'm Jim Antle. I'm joined today by White House reporter Haisten Willis. Haisten, President Biden, after kind of pivoting toward the economy, sort of recognizing that the midterm elections are about the economy, has made another pivot back, giving a major speech, or at least a primetime address, talking about the threats to democracy posed by MAGA Republicans. Talk a little bit about what the president had to say and whether this is a message that can work for them in the home stretch.
Biden did a speech like this once before in Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia specifically, and this speech drew a lot of attention. It was very dark and ominous. People talked a lot about the setting for the speech in particular. There was two big red lights behind him and some Marine station, and he talked then about the threats that Trump or Trump-aligned Republicans pose to democracy. They wouldn't accept the outcome of elections, that democracy itself was on the ballot.
Right.
He apparently wanted a second crack at making a similar speech and did so at D.C.'s Union Station with, again, like you said, a similar message that Republicans are dangerous, that democracy is on the ballot, and there's a implied outcome that if you want to protect democracy, you need to vote for his party, which is, of course, the Democrats. Whether or not people are going to buy this, we'll find out very soon. Right, like you had said, he had started talking more about the economy. I think Democrats have started to realize that the economy is really the bigger, more immediate issue that people feel. They see it at the grocery store. They see it at the gas station. They see their paychecks not going as far. They need to hear about the economy, which Biden did as well. But obviously, he thought that there was still a need for another speech about democracy.
Yeah, it is an interesting pivot. I mean, obviously, you do have the attack on Paul Pelosi, the husband of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, so that is a little bit more of a, what we would call a news peg to maybe talk about political violence, political extremism, people who may reject the outcome of elections. But it did seem to be a little bit of a departure from his recent focus on the economy.
There were, and yeah, like you said, that attack happened just a few days ago. Now, there were some reports that the speech was apparently already in the works before that. Of course, we don't really know, being on the outside. But he definitely, in the speech, tried to tie the two together. He tried to tie a direct line between the Paul Pelosi attack and January 6th, saying that the message was for the invader was "Where's Nancy?" and that was the same thing they were saying in January 6th, trying to tie those two together. Now, conservatives didn't necessarily take kindly to this line of thinking because essentially they number one, they're raising questions about some of the details of we don't know all of the information about the Pelosi attack. We do know a lot about January 6th at this point. Well, we do, and the attacker was not necessarily a Republican or a sort of typical conservative. He had a lot of mental issues. We've actually learned that he's a Canadian national who was in the country illegally. So to try to tie him toward a sort of generic ballot Republican maybe is a bit of a stretch. The other thing, of course, he did not do was talking about election deniers, was talking about anyone on the Democratic side who was an election denier. He didn't talk about Stacey Abrams in Georgia not conceding her race. He didn't talk about Hillary Clinton saying Trump was an illegitimate president. He didn't talk about his own press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, who has said that the 2016 presidential race was stolen, who said the 2018 Georgia governor's race was stolen. He tried to kind of make it a bipartisan thing, but clearly the people who said we're protecting democracy with the folks from his own party.
Yeah, and he's questioned the voting laws in a number of Republican-led states and somewhat implied that they could undercut the legitimacy of the elections, and then even argued that worse things, like there are repeats of racial segregation and Jim Crow.
Yes, he talked about that in Georgia specifically, but other places that passed voter protection laws, what the conservatives called them, or the voter suppression laws, the detractors called them that. He made allusions to Jim Crow 2.0, Jim Crow in the 21st century. But again, that hasn't borne out either. Georgia has set records for voting turnout in the governor's race there, so there's not really a lot of evidence so far to back up those accusations.
Now, the speech may be evidence of a line the White House has taken in that, President Biden, with a significant exception of Pennsylvania, has tended to shy away from some of the states with the most competitive races. And even when he's campaigning for people in competitive races, it's tended to be in fairly blue states. But their argument is he's the president, his words can be heard wherever he speaks from. So talk a little bit about the strategy that the White House seems to have used and how to use President Biden in these midterm elections.
Yeah, he's taken a kind of low-profile approach to the midterms. Like you said, he's avoided most of the battleground states, with the big exception of Pennsylvania, where he's visited a lot. But he's avoided the others: Arizona, Nevada, Georgia. He has not really gone to in campaign. And when he has campaigned, he's done these issues-focused stops. He'll talk about issue X, and then he'll be in the state, and the candidate will be there, but the focus is still on the issue. I'm not exactly sure why they've done this, but that's what they've chosen to do.
So President Biden actually has a lot riding on these elections. He's got a lot on the line these next few days. It's going to be very difficult for him to get much done if Republicans take back even one House of Congress, right?
Biden has gone more aggressive in these last few days of campaigning. He's talked about the threat to democracy that we talked about. He's gone bigger, talking about the economy. He's talking about big oil. He's gone after big oil, saying they need to lower their gas prices. And yeah, the reason is there's a whole lot at stake for Biden in these elections. Of course, he'll be the president for another 2 years, presumably, no matter what happens. But if he doesn't have the majority he has in the House and the range-thin majority he has in the Senate, his agenda, by and large, is done. So there's quite a lot riding on the line for him.
I mean, if they lose the Senate, Democrats, I'm speaking of, if the Democrats lose the Senate, it'll be difficult for Biden even to fill executive branch and judicial branch vacancies.
Yeah, I think Mr. McConnell has already said, and if they take over, if Republicans take over the Senate, and there's a Supreme Court vacancy in 2024, he's not going to fill it. The same thing he did to Obama in last year of his presidency, and I think even in 2023 he said something like "we'll see," something vague like that. So it could be that he's not able to fill things even right after the start of the next year. So there's a lot on the line. Biden does, of course, still have access to, the White House, which a lot comes with that. He can make executive orders. Obama famously said he still has a pen and a phone after losing his majorities in 2014. But Biden also has to face now a conservative Supreme Court, who's already, several courts, including the Supreme Court, have knocked down some of his initiatives he's tried to do on his own. So he'd be facing a conservative-led Congress and a conservative-led Supreme Court. It will be tough sledding for him in those last 2 years.
Definitely courting some controversy. Thank you, Haisten. You can read Haisten and the rest of our political team's coverage at washingtonexaminer.com.